G'day and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to give you a considered and responsible answer to the question of whether it is safe to use a foam roller on your spine. And without trying to spoil the rest of the video, the answer is yes, but it depends. And what I'd like to touch on is to explain why something like foam rolling is not only inherently safe, but the principles of what we're trying to achieve from foam rolling are almost a must if you want to avoid low back pain or improve the function of your spine long term. Following on from that, I'd like to touch on a couple of different techniques that you can use with a foam roller that can help you optimize that function of your spine and hopefully help you conquer any lower back dysfunction that you might be dealing with, or just help you improve the function of your lower back to allow you to do the things that you want to do day to day better. So when I was putting together a plan of what I wanted to talk about in this video, this being a YouTube channel, I decided to have a look around the YouTube community to see what other people are saying about whether foam rolling is safe or good for your spine. And for me as a physiotherapist, it was really interesting to see that there was so much negativity towards using a foam roller on your spine. And while I don't want to single anyone out specifically, what I think this speaks to is that in the health and medical communities, it's very easy for us to be narrow focused on a specific issue, but often what's required is to take a broader step back to understand what is inherently normal for the body and then try and figure out why something doesn't feel normal for you. For example, one of the ideas that's being thrown around is that using a foam roller on your lower back is inherently unsafe because by reclining over a foam roller into extension, we're potentially putting too much extension into a back that already has a small extension-based curve or a lordosis. What's really important to understand is that those ideas can make perfect sense, and the people that promoted those ideas can certainly mount a very reasonable case to explain why they're saying those things. But again, for me clinically as a physiotherapist, it's important to understand that if we take a small step back, we can understand that there's actually more to those conversations than are being immediately discussed. And before I get into explaining why foam rolling your spine should be inherently safe for you in a perfect world, it's really important to note when it may not be safe for you. So if you ask someone who has any of the following things, or you suspect that you may have any of the following things, please make sure that you consult your doctor, your physical therapist, your physiotherapist, your health practitioner, just to make sure that this is okay for you to do. If you are someone who has osteoporosis, if you have stenosis, if you have a spondylolysis or a spondylolisthesis, these things are definitely something that you might need to consider before doing any foam rolling technique, and here's why. So the idea with foam rolling is that we're trying to use an object that doesn't have to be a foam roller. It can be a lacrosse ball or a peanut, it doesn't matter what it is, it can be a rolled up towel. But the idea with this technique is that we're trying to use the pressure from an object to either loosen up some of the soft tissue or the spinal joints within that spine to improve the function of that spine as a whole. And it's important to keep that in mind because that plays into where you put the roller and the techniques that you use to improve the symptoms that you find. But essentially with a foam roller, all it tends to be is that we're putting pressure through the bony aspects or the soft tissue aspects of your spine and promoting extension through those areas. So whether you're doing this through your mid back or you're doing this all the way down at your lower back, all that we're trying to do is promote extension through that spine. And the reason why it shouldn't matter whether you have the foam roller on your lower back or your mid back is that extension is normal and a normal expression of spinal function. You should be able to extend your back as far as you feel comfortable without feeling stiff, tight, restricted. It should feel smooth. And it's much the same as trying to bend side to side or bending forwards. You shouldn't feel restricted or apprehensive moving in any of those directions if your spinal function is normal underneath. So to say that extending through a foam roller is inherently bad for your lower back, then you are essentially conceding that extending through your lower back as a whole is also bad for you. And it's not to say that it doesn't feel uncomfortable for you or it can't exacerbate some underlying dysfunction that you have, but we need to make sure that we separate those two ideas where we need to have a very achievable and an attainable goal for you to feel comfortable extending at some stage in the future. But if it doesn't currently feel comfortable, we need to figure out why that is, improve that enough so that you can start to get closer to full extension long term. The only reason that I care about foam rolling techniques is because I feel like they get the results that I'm looking for. And as we'll get to towards the end of the video, I'm going to touch on a couple of techniques that might help you feel the same way, but ultimately you shouldn't be doing something that you don't feel does something good for you. It doesn't matter how compelling of an argument I can make in this video, if it doesn't feel good for you and you can't find a version of that that does feel good for you, then maybe you might need to find something else that tries to achieve the principles of what you're trying to achieve with this foam roller, which is to mobilize stiff, tight and restricted sections of your back to hopefully decrease any pain, but more importantly improve the function of your spine and its ability to extend. Now, one of the other things that people can be a little bit apprehensive of is the putting pressure through your spine directly. And again, if your spine is healthy, there should absolutely not be a reason why putting pressure through a part of your body is inherently unsafe. Your body is not fragile, it is robust. If some gentle pressure through an area does send you through the roof, then it's found something more sinister at play. And the goal should always be to feel no discomfort, no stiffness, no tightness, regardless of where you have the foam roller in your spine, because it shouldn't be exposing something that was already there. But I think one of the important aspects to this that I need to explain as well is that I think the way that we use a foam roller is potentially not as effective or as efficient as it could be. I think by definition, because it's called a foam roller, we often have this innate drive to pop ourselves on the roller and roll up and down. Now again, for me clinically as a physiotherapist, this can feel nice. It can potentially maybe make you feel a little bit more mobile and a little bit more relaxed. But I find the best way to make instant change is to actually find a segment or a level that feels stiff, tight, or restricted for you and give it a chance to push in. Again, we don't necessarily need you to roll up and down the middle of your spine. Generally, the dysfunction in someone's spine is on one side more than the other. So it's actually more advantageous to spend time on one side slightly than it is being straight up and down your spine. If you feel like it's a broader stiffness, if there's a segment that you feel is quite restricted, and I have one just here, then you might need to spend a little bit of time just allowing that tissue to accommodate, to free up, and ultimately release or mobilize before moving on to the next segment and repeating the same process. But ultimately what we're looking for when foam rolling is we're not just looking for pain, we're looking for that sense of stiffness, tightness, restrictions, a thicker density compared to the other side, which may feel looser, lighter, softer, more supple, and less tender. But ultimately, the idea of directly putting pressure through aspects of your spine or using a foam roller to force you into more extension being inherently bad for you just lacks the necessary perspective to see things for what they actually are. Truth be told, as a physiotherapist, one of the main mobilizing techniques that we're taught is a spinal joint mobilization, where we get our hands, we push our hands into your spine, and we try and get the individual joints, facet joints, rib joints to move if they're not moving. But if you have a red flag like osteoporosis, then it's probably not the technique that you should be using to make those differences that you're looking for. Go for more active range of motion exercises that try and bias where your stiff segments might actually be. But ultimately, we need to base this on how you feel and the results that you may or may not get from doing this. So with that in mind, I want to go through the technique again that I use with my patients and that I go through on the channel that seems to be highly effective at achieving the things that I think we need to achieve with a foam roller. And there's a few different subtle variations of what you can do while using this to get the most out of it for your specific condition and your specific situation. What we want to try and achieve with this is, again, we want to get you to lie down on the roller, and we're going to go for the junction at the base of your rib cage at the top of your lower back. This tends to be a sweet spot for a lot of the dysfunction that I see with my patients clinically. So you've got two options here. You can have your hips on the ground. If you can get your hands behind your head comfortably, you can do that to support your neck. We can either recline back from the top to a level that feels comfortable for you. You're welcome to have some pillows or some cushions here, just so you feel like you're not working too hard. The other way that you can do this is you can take the same approach, but having your head and shoulders on the ground and lifting your hips up. From here, what you can do is the same thing, is you can just drop your hips down to extend your spine as far as you feel comfortable. But again, as I said before, the important tip here is that we want to make sure that you're just slightly rolling off to one side, slightly rolling off to the other side to get a gauge for which side feels the hardest, the stiffest, the tightest, and the most restricted. You will find that in most cases, one side does feel softer than the other. Even if that side is the most tender, the side that has the most restriction is the side that you want to spend the most time on, because we're clearly trying to mobilize your spine. We're not trying to irritate and poke a sore spot. And mechanically, the reason why this is important is that your body doesn't think of you as a left and a right. It just thinks of you as a spine. So if one part of your spine has become stiff, but the other part has become sore, then we need to go looking for where those mechanical restrictions are, respectfully get rid of them so that everything can function normally to give your pain the best chance to settle down as quickly as possible. So getting back down again, once you've found the level that you feel you need to be on and the side that you need to be on as well, you can just relax on this and let the roller or the object just gently push into those joints and ask them to respectfully start to mobilize. If you want to try and speed things up, you're welcome to take a couple of deep breaths. If you breathe into the roller In this area, your rib cage is here, so if there's any spinal joint and rib joint restrictions as well, you'll get that subtle mobilization as you breathe. But the other things that we can do is if you take that deep breath into the roller, and then squeeze any soft tissue that you can around that area. This will also capture some of the muscular tissue that might also be tight around those deeper joints. And when you relax, they may relax a little bit more than they would have otherwise. Again, if you want to take this a step further, if you have your arms above your head and hook it underneath something, whether it be a couch or a chair, once you've found the spot that feels tight and restricted for you, you can gently push up into the chair without trying to lift it off to tense up all the tissue around that spine, around those stiff segments. If you do that for 5 to 10 seconds, when you relax, it'll give a little bit, and you might find you can sink into it a little bit further than you could before. But those techniques are variations that you can employ to try and find where your stiff spinal segments might be and give them the best chance to relax and release and mobilize than just rolling up and down on the roller. And what you should hopefully find from doing this efficiently is that when you stand up again and extend and move, you deserve to feel instantly more mobile than you were before. So with that being said, I genuinely hope that that was helpful and maybe a little bit insightful for you. Let me know in the comments down below how that may have resonated with you. If you enjoy this type of content, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.